She stood alone on the gravel. 40 eyes on her, none kind. But what came next? No one expected. The dawn sky stretched pale and cold over Fort Morrison, a military post tucked in Montana's frostbitten hills. Emily Mercer's battered Ford pickup coughed its way past the main gate, engine clattering like an old watch coming apart. The guard on duty, fresh-faced, bored, clipboard in hand, barely looked at her papers before lifting an eyebrow. "Ma'am, you sure? At the right place?" Emily nodded. Just once. No smile, no words wasted. Her hazel eyes didn't blink, didn't shift. They'd already decided. The guard radioed ahead. She saw it in the mirror as she pulled through. The look on his face wasn't unkind, just confused. They weren't expecting someone like her. Fort Morrison wasn't just a base. It was the base. The crucible for the most elite intelligence officers in the United States military. Established in the paranoid aftermath of Saigon's fall, it trained a rare kind of mind. Officers who could slip through the cracks of history, unseen but never absent. Emily parked between two spotless military jeeps. Her truck looked like a rusted memory between them. Duct tape on the window, a dent in the fender like a war scar. She killed the engine and stepped out, gravel crunching under her boots. Canvas backpack slung over one shoulder, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her olive tee was faded, her cargo pants neatly pressed but clearly worn, nothing about. Her said officer, across the yard, 40 men and women stood in formation. Sharp uniforms, sharper jaws. Some chatted, some scanned her like an anomaly. But the talking stopped when she approached. One man, Michael Carter, tall and broad from too many years of college football and officer school, leaned to the man beside him. "Who the hell is that?" No one answered. Then Captain Howard Marshall stepped onto the parade ground, lean, wiry, and all bones hardened by Vietnam. He carried his clipboard like a weapon. The group snapped to attention. At ease, his eyes scanned the line, then landed on her, name and rank. Emily Mercer, Captain. Marshall checked his clipboard, frowned. "You're late, Mercer." "My truck broke down outside Billings, sir. I fixed it." A ripple moved through the formation. A smirk here, a cough of laughter there. Fixed it herself? "This program doesn't tolerate excuses," Marshall said flatly. "Fall in." Emily joined the end of the line. She didn't react to the stares, didn't look right or left, just stood. Marshall paced. "For the next 16 weeks, you will be broken down and rebuilt. Half of you won't make it. This isn't about where you came from. Not your family, your rank, your ribbons. What matters is what you can do. What you can endure." His eyes lingered on Emily for one fraction longer than the others. "Dismiss the barracks. Gear inspection at 0600. Don't be late." The trainees dispersed. As she turned, Carter's shoulder clipped hers. Too rough to be accidental. "You sure you're in the right place, farm girl?" Emily met his eyes. "Quite sure." He grunted and walked off. A woman beside him, sharp eyes, sharper tone, sneered as she passed. "They'll let anyone in these days," she said, not bothering to whisper. Emily ignored her. She'd heard worse, much worse. The women's barracks was a concrete box that offered no warmth, only efficiency. Metal bunks, lockers, rows of uniforms like ghosts standing to attention. Emily took a bottom bunk in the corner. Coldest spot in the room. Pipes clanked above. Wind slipped through the seams. Wilson, that was her name, claimed the bed nearest the heater with 2 others. She watched Emily unpack. 3 sets of fatigues, neatly folded, a small leather kit, a single photograph tucked into her chest pocket. No reaction, no chatter. "Hey, thrift shop?" Wilson called across the room. "Where'd you serve before this?" Emily didn't look up. "Motor pool, Camp Loon, recon?" Wilson's brow rose. "Before that?" "Fort Benning, force recon?" Wilson echoed. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." Emily didn't answer. She lay down, hands folded over her stomach, eyes closed, but not asleep. Never asleep. That night, the wind howled, pipes groaned. Someone whispered a joke about farm girls and grease monkeys. Emily lay still, listening. Morning exploded at 0430. Lights slammed on, boots thundered, showers hissed at 0500. Emily stood at attention beside her bunk, uniform pressed, bed made with military corners so tight they could slice. Captain Marshall walked in like a storm on legs. Inspections were swift, brutal. He reached her bunk. Paws, no flaws. His frown deepened. Adequate, Mercer. At 0530. They were on the parade ground. Frost silvered the grass. Air so cold it cracked inside your lungs. The run began. 5 miles up punishing Montana hills. Emily ran middle of the pack. Her breathing was controlled, her stride consistent. Carter came alongside. Tried to outpace her. She kept up, didn't blink. Not bad. For a grease monkey, he said, breath catching. She said nothing. You winded? Conserving energy. By mile 4, Carter was lagging. He stumbled. Her hand shot out. Steadied him for a heartbeat. He jerked away. I don't need your help. She kept running. In the mess hall, she ate alone. Powdered eggs, toast, black coffee. Wilson watched from across the room, eyes narrow, calculating. Then another figure slid into the seat opposite Emily. Daniel Parker, former Army Ranger. Jaw like carved stone and eyes that saw more than they admitted. This seat taken? He asked, already sitting. Emily shook her head, ate her toast. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? He shrugged. Someone who looks like they belong in intelligence. You look like you should be fixing a Jeep. Emily sipped her coffee. Silent. They say you were Force Recon. She didn't confirm, didn't deny. I know guys from Recon. He continued. Are bastards. None of them small and quiet like you. She set her mug down. You questioning my record, Parker? Her voice was low, calm, final. He blinked. No offense meant. None taken. She stood. See you at the range, Parker said behind her. Hope you shoot better than you socialize. The range was brutal, simulated combat, smoke, shouting. Targets that popped up as civilians or enemies. The instructors barked conflicting orders. The stress was intentional. Emily's rifle had misaligned sights. She noticed instantly, adjusted. When she ran the course, her movements were fluid, controlled. Every round precise, 2 to the chest, civilians untouched. Even a surprise target, a child silhouette with a weapon, was disabled. Not killed. 42 targets, 42 hits, 0 civilian casualties. Captain Marshall blinked at her results. Carter ran next, showy, aggressive, missed 3. Hit 2 civilians. He saw her score on the board. Beginner's luck, he muttered to Wilson. Frowned. She's not what she seems, Parker just watched. Said nothing. Later, in the classroom, the instructor asked Emily to evaluate Soviet Eastern European strategy. She stood, calm, spoke numbers, troop ratios, command structure flaws, KGB infiltration rates. When she cited a classified defector case from memory, the room fell silent. The instructor narrowed his eyes. That wasn't in your course material. Emily's tone didn't change. Yes, sir. See me after class. She did. He opened her file, page after page of redactions. Who are you, really? He asked. She met his eyes. Just a soldier. But in that moment, even he didn't believe her. Why did the instructor's clearance stop where her file began? And why did her tattoo, when seen, freeze a general in his tracks? The weeks that followed broke bodies and cracked minds. At Fort Morrison, that was the point. Each day began before dawn. PT in sub-zero wind, then tactical drills. Then, hours under fluorescent lights decoding foreign threat patterns and dissecting black ops failures. It was designed to shatter the overconfident and expose the weak. Emily Mercer didn't shatter. She didn't rise, didn't fall. She just endured. Some noticed, most didn't. That was how she preferred it. Instructors tried to catch her slipping. They never did. Captain Marshall, scowling more with each passing day, searched her gear for violations. Nothing. Watched her spar for signs of poor reflexes. None. Reviewed her shooting scores with a ruler and a magnifying glass. Still nothing. It wasn't that she was perfect. It was that she was trained at a level few even knew existed. Carter, whose ego was inversely proportional to his patience, couldn't let it go. His friendly ribbing turned to snide remarks. The kind that expected backup from others? Sometimes you got it. But even those who laughed started noticing things. Like how Emily could build a fire in rain using pine resin without a match. Or how she always knew where they were. Exactly where in any land nav exercise, even with no map, no compass, just clouds and terrain. And then there was the SEER module, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The kind of training normally reserved for downed pilots or special ops, prisoners of war scenarios, psychological stressors, sleep deprivation, simulated enemy interrogations, isolation. Emily didn't blink, while others fought the guards. Or begged for sleep. She went still, not resigned, focused. Her mind retreated to places no one else could reach. Compartmentalized pain. She whispered once to Parker through a vent when they were both in isolation. Find one memory. Live in it. He asked her later, once they'd been released into a mock escape and evade mission, how she learned that trick. She didn't answer, but her eyes. They held things, silent things, like she'd once needed that lesson to stay alive. The escape exercise was supposed to simulate a capture-escape scenario. A fake convoy, a staged ambush, and then a trek through Montana wilderness. No maps. No radios, 4-person teams, 48 hours to reach an extraction point. Emily's team was no coincidence. They assigned her to Carter, Parker, and Wilson, the three who had either mocked her or doubted her since day one. Perfect, Carter muttered when they read the roster. We get the janitor. No one laughed. Not anymore. Still, Carter tried to lead, charged off in the wrong direction. Emily led him for 2 miles. Then, when the sun tilted and the valley wind shifted, she spoke. We're headed into a bottleneck. Says who? Carter snapped. She pointed. There's a rockfall here. Any pursuit team would trap us. We need to cut south. There's a ravine. It'll break up our heat sig. Carter's laugh was forced. You know about our tracking too? Emily met his eyes, calm. That's what I'd do. If I were hunting us, that shut him up. They went south. They made camp in a natural stone fold, protected on 3 sides. Emily built a fire no one else could have started, divided up watches, took first, shift herself. While the others slept or tried to, she scanned the darkness, alert without being anxious. A statue with breath. Parker didn't sleep. You've done this before, he whispered. For real, Emily didn't turn. Get some rest. That's not an answer. No, she said. It's not. They moved at dawn. Emily led, through water to throw off scent, across granite to leave no prints. By midday, the others were flagging, but she showed no fatigue, and that's when the ambush came. Carter and Wilson had doubled back, waited, hid in the rocks. As Emily and Parker passed through a narrow ravine, Carter triggered the rock slide. Emily heard it before she saw it, a scrape that didn't belong in nature. She shoved Parker aside, taking the brunt of the debris herself. It tore her shirt, gashed her shoulder. When Parker reached her, she was already pushing herself up. Then, he froze, on her back, between her shoulder blades. Inked in perfect lines and silence was the mark. A black panther mid-leap, claws extended, arched above a shattered compass. It was no ordinary tattoo. It was a ghost. The symbol of Phantom Echo, a unit that didn't officially exist. Parker's uncle had once flown for night stalkers, had whispered stories to him as a kid. Stories about operators with no names, no records, just a calling sign, hidden in flesh. The Panther. Holy. You're one of them, Parker breathed. Emily pulled her shirt up, said nothing. Above them, Carter shouted down. Rock must have slipped. You okay down there? Emily didn't respond. Parker turned to her, eyes wide. Your phantom echo. She didn't nod, didn't confirm. Just, help me up. Then a voice broke the tension. Sharp, commanding. That's enough, Colonel Reynolds, the base commander. He stepped into view above the ridge, his expression unreadable, when his eyes landed on Emily's back, on the tattoo. They changed, from suspicion to recognition, then to reverence. Captain Mercer, he said slowly, my apologies for the interruption. Emily stood, brushed off her sleeves, met his eyes without flinching. No apology necessary, Colonel. He turned to Carter and Wilson, his voice going steel. You, too, report to Captain Marshall immediately. This exercise is over. They hesitated. Now, they went, when Reynolds came down the slope. He didn't salute, not at first. He paused, then did. A full, slow salute, one officer to another, one warrior to something more. Parker stared, stunned. Shadow spoke highly of you, Reynolds said quietly. The honor's mine, Emily replied. They walked together in silence. When they reached the edge of the camp, Reynolds gestured toward the main gate, and waiting there, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, uniformed in stars, was a man Parker recognized instantly, General Robert Mercer, head of Special Operations Command. His father, Parker's mouth went dry. What's he doing here? He asked aloud. Emily's steps faltered only for a heartbeat, but then she kept walking. He's waiting for me, she said softly. He always does. Why did the general salute her? And what secrets was she carrying that even the CIA hadn't cleared? The debriefing room was a bunker, windowless, concrete, claustrophobic. Fluorescence hummed above like a warning tone only the wary could hear. Emily sat on one side of the steel table. Colonel Reynolds sat across from her, standing near the door, tall enough to darken a room just by being in it. General Robert Mercer, her husband, remained silent. On the table between them lay a manila folder, her real personnel file, stamped with classification levels Reynolds had never seen. Redacted pages replaced with the truth. The folder had arrived that morning, hand-delivered by Mercer himself. Reynolds hadn't opened it in front of her. He didn't need to. I know now, he said, voice low. Why you're really here? Emily said nothing. Reynolds rubbed his temple. You're not a trainee. You're not here to graduate. You're here to watch, observe, she corrected, and assess and recruit? Possibly. For what? Emily looked toward Mercer. He gave a single nod. Phantom echo, she said. Reynolds exhaled slowly. I thought that unit was dissolved. Officially, Mercer said. Unofficially, pieces remain, operatives, assets, networks, and now, her. She's the best we've ever had, Mercer replied. Reynolds turned to Emily again. Why this base? We intercepted chatter 6 months ago. Soviet counterintelligence is embedding assets in American training programs. Quietly, patiently, not just to gather intel, but to influence selection pipelines. Her voice was steady, clinical, but her eyes were searching. Fort Morrison, she continued, is high risk. It feeds directly into Tier 1 intelligence assignments. If the Soviets get plants here, we're compromised from the inside. So you embedded yourself. Reynolds said, you took the beatings, the isolation, the whispers. She nodded once. Because only under pressure, she said, do people reveal what they are. Reynolds looked down at the folder again, slowly closed it. His voice was quieter now. And what have you found? Emily's face darkened. Someone is close. Carter was a distraction. a blunt object. Not intelligent enough to be a mole, Wilson. She's the opposite. Too sharp, too polished, too perfect. Reynolds hesitated. We can pull her in, interrogate, go clean. No, Emily said. If we pull too soon, we lose the network. I don't want a mole. I want all of them. Reynolds stood. And you think she's talking to someone? I know she is. At that moment, a knock rattled the door. Not a tap, a demand. Captain Marshall entered without waiting. He ignored Emily. Sir, he said to Mercer, Lieutenants Carter and Wilson are filing a formal accusation there, claiming Captain Mercer sabotaged the training exercise. Reynolds' jaw locked. And? They're demanding a review. Carter's father is on the Armed Services Committee. He's already made a call. General Mercer's expression didn't change. Captain Marshall, he said, his voice like frost on steel. Effective immediately. Captain Mercer is no longer under your command. Marshall blinked. Sir? She is now a special advisor to this program, full operational authority, reports directly to myself and Colonel Reynolds. She outranks you. Marshall swallowed hard. Yes, sir. And Marshall, Mercer added, not a word of this leaves. This room, crystal clear, sir. As the door shut behind him, Emily looked across the table at her husband. Special advisor? Would you prefer vengeful ghost? He smirked, only half kidding. Besides, it's not entirely a cover. You're needed now. Not as a shadow, but as a hammer. Her face sobered. They'll react. I know. They'll come for me. Mercer looked at her then. Really looked. They'd better come prepared. The lecture hall buzzed with speculation. Whispers chased down rows of uniforms. Something had shifted. The SEER exercise had ended abruptly. A general had appeared. Then a classified meeting, and now a new instructor was rumored. Parker sat in the back. He wasn't talking. He was thinking about a tattoo, a legend, a story his uncle once told about a woman who didn't exist. And then the door opened. Reynolds stepped to the podium behind him. Emily, but not the Emily they thought they knew. No more second-hand fatigues. No more ponytail and silence. She wore a formal uniform now. Medals they didn't recognize. Decorations most officers never even saw. Her posture had shifted, not louder. Sharper. The difference between an instructor and a weapon. When she passed Carter, he went pale. When she looked at Wilson, her expression didn't change. But her eyes never blinked. Reynolds stepped back. Emily took the podium. This program, she began, is not about your resume or your last name or your ability to shout the loudest. Her voice was calm, unrushed. It's about what you do when your cover is blown, when your mission falls apart, when the person beside you turns out to be the threat. The room was silent. Some of you have already shown that personal ambition matters more to you than mission integrity. Her eyes passed over Wilson, then Carter. That ends now. She paused. Let it sit. Starting tomorrow, you will undergo specialized training in counterintelligence, covert operations, and deep cover protocols. Those who meet the standard will go places you didn't know existed. Those who don't will be reassigned. She stepped back, and General Mercer stepped forward. No one had questions, not even Carter. That night, in the barracks, silence ruled. The women stared at Emily's now empty bunk. Wilson paced like a tiger. It doesn't make sense, she muttered. 3 weeks of playing the underdog, and now she's running the damn program? Maybe she was evaluating us all along, said a quiet voice. Harper, a soft-spoken analyst type. No one had paid her much attention. Wilson turned on her. What? Harper shrugged. This is intelligence work. Maybe this was the test. See how we react to someone who doesn't fit. Wilson narrowed her eyes. Whose side are you on? Harper closed her book. The one that wins. Emily sat alone in her new quarters. Officer level now. Privacy, a bed, a desk, and a single file open in front of her. Wilson's too clean, too efficient. Too designed, a knock. 3 short. Too slow, Robert. She opened the door. He held 2 mugs of black coffee. Still take it this way? Some things don't change. They sat in silence. Then Mercer sighed. Carter's father is making calls. Ignore him. He almost killed you, Emily, in a training op. He's not the concern. No? Wilson is. She's too curious and too quiet. Mercer nodded. Want me to pull her? Not yet. She'll lead us somewhere. You're playing with fire. She took a sip. I was trained in the dark. Robert, I don't flinch. Hey. Reached across the table. Took her hand. Brushed his thumb over her wedding band. She surfaced. Emily froze. Who? James made contact, Berlin. Her pulse skipped. What did he say? Mercer handed her a note. It was short. Code words from another life. She wasn't the last. Phantom echo still active. 3 birds in the nest. Emily's face went cold. There are 3 moles, she whispered. Here. She looked up at her husband. I'm going to find them, and in her voice, the calm of a storm that hadn't yet hit. Why did her enemy always smile too easily? And why did she watch the sunrise from the east track every morning? Fort Morrison woke at 05:00 to the sound of bugles and boots, just like always, but everything had changed. The trainees didn't know it yet, not fully, but something heavy had settled over the base. An invisible tension, like a wire drawn taut between silence and revelation. Emily stood on the gravel again. This time, in command, she wore combat fatigues now, practical and neat, but no longer faded. She looked every inch the officer the others had ignored, and the weight she carried was no longer hidden. Today, she said, voice crisp, we begin specialized training in counterintelligence operations. No build-up, no soft opening, just the truth. This is not theoretical, this is not something you'll learn in shelf. This is preparation for threats that already exist. She paced before them, her steps measured. The Cold War is not a standoff of missiles. It's a war of whispers, a war of influence, a war of identities. The friend beside you might be the enemy. The coffee you drink might carry a code. The smile from a stranger may not be a welcome, but a signal. Her gaze passed over the formation, then stopped, squarely, on Lieutenant Wilson. The most dangerous threat to America isn't a Soviet bomb. It's an American with access. Who's been turned? The words landed with the force of a confession, but Emily didn't elaborate. She moved on, kept walking. Each of you will be assigned a cover identity, a mission, and a task. From this moment on, you are no longer soldiers. You are civilians attending a conference on international trade. You will interact as if your lives depend on the cover, because in the field, they often will. Captain Marshall and Colonel Reynolds moved down the line, handing out sealed envelopes. Memorize your identity, destroy the packet, then report. To the officers' club in civilian attire, Carter cracked open his envelope immediately. Sneered. This is childish role-playing games for adults? Emily heard it and responded without slowing. Lieutenant Carter, she said, her tone sharp but cool. Since you seem eager to challenge protocol, perhaps you'd like to share your own field experience in high-level counterintelligence operations with the class. Carter stiffened. No, ma'am. Then save your opinions. Your attitude has been noted. The whisper that followed wasn't from her voice. It was from the others, the trainees watching the power dynamic shift. Her authority was no longer questioned. It was feared. The officers' club had been transformed overnight, where drinks and darts once ruled. Now sat a formal conference setup. Name placards, slide projectors, coffee service, a podium, background. Chatter hummed, soft jazz played. The illusion was airtight. Emily arrived last, in a tailored navy blue suit, conservative, strategic, her physicality muted, her presence anything but. She assumed the role of conference organizer, giving her full access to the room. Without needing to be the center of it, Parker entered as a Norwegian shipping magnate. He looked stiff in the suit. His Scandinavian accent was passable, until he spoke longer than 2 sentences. Then it drifted into nowhere. Carter had been cast as a French trade representative. He leaned into the arrogance, but butchered the accent. Still, he played his part with enough flair to pass. Wilson moved like she belonged. Her British economic advisor persona was seamless. She charmed. She listened. She extracted, never revealing. Always receiving, her poise was perfect, her smile timed, but Emily watched deeper. She tracked eye movements, noted whose conversations Wilson joined, noted which questions she asked, and which ones she avoided. Emily didn't need a wire to record Wilson's patterns. She had shadows training, and that was sharper. The first anomaly came at 1100 hours. A minor trainee, Richards, playing a Japanese delegate, received a folded piece of paper during a handshake with Wilson. It looked innocent, a formality, but Emily saw it. He didn't read it, just pocketed it and kept walking. 10 minutes later, he left the room, claimed. The restroom, Emily followed. Not too close, she didn't need to. She heard the paper unfold, heard the change in his breathing. When he emerged, he didn't return to the conference. He went left, toward the comm center. That was no civilian route. Emily circled outside, found a visual point of access, waited. 15 minutes later, Richards exited through the back, walking fast. His posture had changed. Not nervous, directed. She made a note, in her mind and on her hidden recorder, then returned to the club. Wilson was deep in conversation with Carter. Too close, too deliberate. Emily moved into earshot. It doesn't make sense, Carter muttered. Why would she reveal herself now? She didn't choose to, Wilson replied. She was forced. Carter leaned closer. The question is, how much does she know about us? When they noticed Emily nearby, Carter jolted upright, French accent stumbling back into place. Ah, the shipping regulations. Yes, very restrictive, yes? Emily smiled pleasantly. I couldn't help overhearing your concern about North African trade corridors. We have a session scheduled tomorrow on that very topic. I'll add you both to the list. They nodded. Awkward. She turned her attention to Wilson, casual tone, lethal intent. Ms. Harrington, she said, using Wilson's alias. I noticed you missed the Soviet embargo session this morning. A migraine, Wilson said smoothly. I've reviewed the materials. Of course, Emily said, smiling faintly. I find routine helps, consistent meals, hydration, exercise. She paused. I noticed you run the east track each morning. The sunrise is beautiful from there. Wilson's expression didn't change, but her eyes did. Just a flicker. Emily had seen it before. In double agents, in defectors, in liars. The snap between practice control and primal alarm. Emily's smile never faltered. Perhaps I'll join you sometime. I run alone, Wilson replied with a practiced grin. As do I, Emily said, but I appreciate the invitation. She walked away. The seed had been planted, the pressure applied. Now she'd wait for the cracks. The rest of the day played out like a theater set for intelligence operatives. Trauma scenarios, crisis drills, shifting dynamics between identities. Some thrived, some struggled. By nightfall, the strain had surfaced on every face. Colonel Reynolds stood beside Emily near the podium as the room cleared. Initial impressions? He asked. She handed him her notes. 3 names circled. Wilson. Too perfect. Richards. Behavioral change. Harper. He raised an eyebrow. Harper? She's been background noise. Exactly, Emily said. Too quiet. Always listening. Perfect placement to gather secondary intel. Nothing overt. Nothing traceable. Reynolds flipped through the pages. What's next? Escalation. Emily said calmly, tomorrow we stage a breach, a leak. We let fear bloom and see who tries to protect their cover or protect their mission. Reynolds frowned. You think they'll panic? No, she said. They'll act. He studied her. And if they don't? They're ghosts. Her voice went quiet, but I was trained by a better one. That night, Emily stood at her window, watching the lights flicker across Fort Morrison. Somewhere out there, 3 people were working for the other side, wearing the same uniform, swearing the same oath, and betraying it. Her hand drifted to her shoulder, to the tattoo beneath her shirt. The panther, the compass, Shadow's mark, James Blackwood, her mentor, her ghost, had reappeared for a reason. 3 birds in the nest, 3 lies walking in plain sight, and tomorrow? One of them would flinch, or they'd all burn. Why did the fake leak feel too real? And who slipped a note under her door that read, "They know who you are now"? The breach was never meant to be perfect. That was the point. A data drive was found in the West Corridor, intentionally. Labeled as signal relay logs, priority red. It was just real enough to provoke the right kind of fear, but fake enough to control. Colonel Reynolds made the discovery, announced it during morning briefing, and ordered a full lockdown of Fort Morrison for 24 hours. All trainees were told the truth, that an unauthorized device had been found on base. None were told it was planted, but Emily was watching for reactions, not confessions. She stood in the observation room, eyes on the cameras as the news hit each group like a stone in still water. Panic, denial, confusion, and then patterns. Carter made a loud show of blaming tech staff. Parker got quiet. Harper asked no questions, just wrote in a notebook. But Wilson didn't move at all. Just one blink, one sip of water. Then her hand slowly slid into her pocket and came out empty. That was enough for Emily. She turned to the tech specialist. Zoom on her left hand. Playback from 15 seconds before. The announcement. The footage reversed, zoomed. At the moment the breach was mentioned, Wilson's fingers twitched toward a pressure point in her left sleeve. Not panic, protocol, signal transmission? The tech asked quietly. Emily nodded. Most likely a short tap code, pressure-based. Confirm? No. Let it sit. If she thinks the base suspects her, she'd try to clean up the trail. Reynolds stepped in from the adjacent room. She's too smart for an open slip. That's why we gave her a reason to panic. He handed Emily a slip of paper. This was found in your mailbox this morning. No one saw who left it. She read it once. They know who you are now. No name. No handwriting. Just that. Richards? Reynolds guessed. Maybe, Emily said. But it doesn't feel like a warning. It feels like a signal, a burn notice. Someone inside her network telling her to cut ties, fast. And you think she'd try? I think she already has. Emily's voice dropped. She's watching me now. The next hours moved slowly, like a clock stuck between 2 seconds. Every door locked, every hallway guarded. The trainees were confined to their barracks and offices, told to await further instruction. Inside the women's barracks, Wilson pretended to pace from boredom. Harper lay on her bunk reading at 1600. Wilson slipped a folded towel under her bunk and pretended to do yoga stretches, routine. But Emily had tapped into the barracks' thermal signatures 2 hours ago. A heat signature lit up beneath Wilson's bed. Not a weapon, a hard drive. Emily waited. 20 minutes later, Wilson stretched again, then discreetly slid the towel out. Along with the drive now hidden inside it, she slipped it into a canteen, and 15 minutes after that, she requested permission to visit the infirmary. Stomach cramps, she told the guard. The infirmary was clear across the base, and she knew it. Permission was granted. Emily made her move. She was already waiting near the supply corridor, dressed in fatigues like any other staffer. She wore a ball-cap low radio earpiece tucked behind her braid. She followed from a safe distance. Wilson moved fast but not recklessly. Straight path, no hesitation. She passed through the supply alley and into the unused laundry annex, unknown. Dead zone for coms and cameras. Emily followed 2 paces behind. When Wilson opened the dryer chute and slipped the canteen inside, Emily stepped into view. Wrong drop. She said calmly, Wilson froze, just long enough, then spun. Captain Mercer, I wasn't aware you were assigned to patrol. I wasn't, Emily replied. But you were. She nodded toward the chute. Retrieve. The canteen. Now. Wilson hesitated, then stepped back, opened the chute, pulled it out. Emily took it, unscrewed the lid, and slowly removed the drive wrapped in gauze. It was marked with a string of numbers, just enough to scare a command post. Emily's voice went quiet. You're transmitting across the border. I don't know what you mean. You're cut off, Emily said softly. Whoever gave you that note, they abandoned you. The drive's probably useless now, scrambled. That's what Moscow does when they burn an asset. Wilson's jaw twitched. She wasn't panicking. She was calculating. You're very good, she said at last. You're not the first, Emily replied. Then Wilson reached slowly for her shirt collar and tugged it down, revealing a mark, a scar. Not a tattoo, curved like a half ring across her shoulder blade. Branding. Emily's eyes narrowed. I know that mark, she whispered. Belgrade. 1986. The Kononov trial. Wilson smiled. So do I. Emily stepped back. You were turned before your recruitment? Wilson nodded. And no one caught it? No one saw me. A pause. Then Wilson said something that made Emily's blood run colder than Montana air. And you, Mercer, weren't the only Phantom Echo trained to disappear. Emily blinked. What did you just say? Wilson smiled. 3 birds in the nest, she whispered. But only one flies free. And before Emily could stop her, Wilson drove her fist into her own throat. A strike, trained, precise, collapsing her windpipe just enough. Emily moved. Instantly, grabbed her, stabilized her airway. But Wilson was going out, fast. Backup arrived seconds later. Medics rushed in. Reynolds followed, looked down. Alive? Barely, Emily said, but conscious. She knew where to hit. Just enough to black out. Reynolds turned to her. What was that about Echo? Emily stared at the mark on Wilson's back, then at the drive, then at the note from earlier. She wasn't alone, she said, her voice barely audible. She knew me, knew Shadow, knew things only we knew. Reynolds frowned. Then we need to find out who trained her. Emily's eyes didn't move. No, she said. I already know. Silence fell, and when she finally spoke again, it wasn't to anyone in the room, it was to herself. He's still alive. Night fell like lead. Emily sat alone in her quarters, staring at the code printed on the drive. Reynolds wanted it decrypted. General Mercer wanted it secured, but Emily, she wanted to understand it because she recognized the rhythm. The sequence, it wasn't just numbers. It was a signature. She'd seen it before. Shadow used to encrypt his missions with the same cadence, and when he died or vanished, they said Phantom Echo had no commander, but maybe, just maybe, they were wrong. She reached for her field notebook, scanned the slip of paper again. They know who you are now, and for the first time in years. She felt like she didn't. Why did her mentor vanish without a body? And why did the coordinates on the drive lead to a grave that had never been opened? 3 hours past midnight, Emily stood beneath the arc lamp outside the basecombs tower. The Montana wind sliced through her like a whisper from the past. Not loud, but pointed. The drive recovered from Wilson was decrypted by 0100. What it revealed wasn't just sensitive intel. It was personal. 3 sets of coordinates, each marked with a cipher known only to operatives within Phantom Echo. Only one person besides her could have used it. Shadow, James Blackwood, her mentor, her commander, the man who trained her in silence, taught her to vanish without erasing herself. The man she'd watched disappear in the mountains of Kosovo in '99. His body was never recovered. Declared Kier, but Emily knew better. He wouldn't die that easy, not unless he chose to. And now here, buried in a Soviet mole's drive, his echo had returned. Reynolds stood behind her, arms crossed, reading the decoded coordinates. These locations are all restricted sectors, I know, Emily said. Graves, he added, squinting at the second string. This one. It's a cemetery in Virginia. Her voice went quiet. It's where Shadow's marker is. Reynolds blinked. You think? I know. She didn't explain further. Didn't need to. By dawn, she was on a military transport. No one knew she left, except Reynolds and Robert. Section 43 of Langley Rest Cemetery looked like any other military ground. Flat, marked with precision, white stone cut with clean dates and quiet sacrifice. James Blackwood's stone was simple. No rank, no unit. Just his name. And below it, not all shadows disappear. Some wait. Emily knelt before it. She remembered his last words to her. Truth isn't a place, Mercer. It's a test. Win the day. Call me as you'll be alone. You won't like what you find. She pressed her palm against the cold marble, then slid a small key from her sleeve. Inserted it into the ground-level brass slot that most assumed was ornamental. It clicked. The grass beneath the grave shifted. Not down. Back. A panel opened. Hidden. Mechanical. Quiet. Inside. A black case. Unmarked. Shaped like a book. She lifted it inside. 3 things, a dossier, a flash drive, a letter. Her hands didn't shake, but her breathing paused. The letter was handwritten. Mercer, if you found this, it means they did too. You were right to doubt the story. I'm not dead, but I am hunted. And so are you. Trust no signal. Trust no badge. The nest was always deeper than we thought. You trained with one other. Find her. Before they do, at the bottom, no signature. Just her fingers closed around the paper. Her world had changed. Again. Back at Fort Morrison, Reynolds received the call on a secure line. She's alive, he heard, and then silence because the line went dead, not dropped. Cut. Emily returned that night. No fanfare. Her steps were faster, eyes sharper. She headed straight to the base archive room. The training logs from Phantom Echo were sealed. Even Mercer couldn't get them easily, but she didn't need clearance. She wrote half of them, and she remembered one entry. Echo 13. Female, quiet, Eastern extraction. Codename, Huron. She wasn't assigned to Mercer's final team, but she was trained beside her. Emily remembered the name. A girl who never talked, who always watched, who vanished the week before graduation. Official reason. Injury, unofficial. No record, and now? Emily suspected Huron wasn't just alive. She was here. She went straight to Parker. He was in the rec room, studying classified maps. She shut the door behind her. He looked up, instantly alert. Trouble? She nodded. Who's the quietest woman in this program? Harper, he said without hesitation. Emily exhaled. Then she's not Harper. She's Huron. Parker frowned. You're saying she's a Phantom Echo dropout? She didn't drop out, Emily said. She disappeared. On purpose? Most likely. She was never meant to be found. But Wilson found her, Parker said. Or they did. Exactly. Emily grabbed a field tablet. Pulled up. Harper's file. It was pristine. Too pristine. No errors. No inconsistencies. But then, a clue. Her initial intake photograph had metadata. Timestamp, 2022, original file created. 2008? Emily's voice cracked the air. She was inserted. They stared at each other. And then the lights in the room dimmed. Not flickered. Dimmed. Parker reached for his comms. Nothing. Emily's earpiece. Dead. A power cut? No. A signal jam. She stood. Where's Harper? Parker was already pulling up the barracks logs. Last seen 20 minutes ago. Said she was going to chapel for reflection. Emily turned. The chapel's a dead zone. Parker froze. You think she's meeting someone? They ran, boots pounding, shadows bending. The storm that had been circling for weeks, finally crashing down. The chapel was empty. One candle burned, and on the altar, not a Bible, a flash drive. And beside it, a single sheet of paper. Emily approached. Read the words. Don't chase. Huron, follow the truth. Shadow is alive, but not the man you knew. Below that, a map, Eastern Europe. A mark, coordinates, somewhere in Romania. Emily looked at Parker. Her voice, quiet, waited. It's a pullback, she whispered. Huron's gone to ground, but she left the trail open on purpose. You think she wants you to follow? Emily nodded. No, she said. She needs me to. The final lines on the flash drive weren't data. They were audio, a voice she hadn't heard in years. Shadow's voice. Mercer, you were never meant to stay buried in Morrison. The fight is alive. The program was never shut down. They took it from me. Now they want you. Run? Emily closed her eyes. Whispers from the past had turned into a war call. She stood still for just one breath, and then she moved, because the ghosts weren't just speaking anymore. They were calling her home. Why did Huron leave a trail instead of vanishing? And why was the voice in the Romanian safe house not the one she expected to hear? The rain in Bucharest didn't fall. It whispered. Thin and cold, it snuck beneath collars and behind eyes. Soaking more than skin, Emily stood in the alley just off Strada I Breziano. The address circled in red on the map Huron had left. She'd followed the trail without backup. Without orders, without permission. It wasn't a mission now. It was memory. The building was old, a communist leftover, 4 stories tall, all shuttered windows and rotting bricks, no lights, no sounds, except for one, a ticking. She knew that sound. It was a distraction. She stepped around the side, found a utility door cracked open just enough for invitation. Inside, darkness, must. The dry hum of surveillance tech somewhere behind the walls. Then a voice from the shadows. I told them you'd come. It wasn't Shadow's voice. It was hers. Emily turned slowly. Harper? No. Huron. The quietest trainee from Fort Morrison, the one nobody remembered, the one who'd known everything. Now standing there in a black coat, no insignia, no expression. Her eyes were cold, not hostile, but practiced. Someone who had long since turned emotion into a survival tactic. You left to drive, Emily said quietly. Huron nodded. And the map, the note. Yes. Why? Huron exhaled. Because you're the last one left who might still believe in what he tried to build. Emily took one step closer. Shadow. Huron nodded. He's alive, but not safe. Emily's pulse jumped. You've seen him? Yes, twice, years apart, but the second time, he was changed. Compromised? Huron hesitated, conflicted. Emily studied her. You were trained with me. Phantom Echo, the same ops, same silence, and you vanished. Why? Huron walked past her, deeper into the building. Her voice echoed off the stone. Because Shadow told me to. He said the unit was burning from the inside. He didn't know who to trust. Not even you. That cut. Emily swallowed hard. I was loyal. I know, Huron said. So was I. But he was scared. Someone close had turned. Not from Moscow. From inside Echo. A ghost pretending to be a guardian. Emily followed her up the staircase. Dim light. Flickering from above. Then what is this? She asked. Why now? Why surface? Huron stopped on the 3rd floor. Because Shadow's message said one thing I couldn't ignore. She looked back at Emily. They're building it again. Inside the safe house, walls lined with photographs, red string, maps, flight paths. Dozens of faces. Some familiar, some not. One face repeated more than others. A general. American. Decorated alive, Emily stepped closer. Her voice caught. Robert. Huron nodded. Your husband, the general. Emily went cold. That's not possible. He was part of Echo's oversight. Deep level, Shadow trusted him. Until he didn't. Emily's world tilted. No, he's my tether. My handler, Huron's voice softened. He was, but somewhere between the Balkan black sites and DC boardrooms, something changed. Emily felt the walls closing in every moment. Every choice suddenly cast in doubt. Then, who gave me the order to embed in Morrison? Huron's answer was quiet. Not him. A silence fell, and then Emily asked the question. She hadn't let herself consider. Then who am I working for? The room across the hall held only one thing. A desk with an old radio set, and a message, scrawled on the wall in chalk. Truth isn't told, it's revealed. Next to it, a small black speaker. Then it crackled, and his voice came through. Mercer. If you're hearing this, then Huron found you. That means the circle is closing. It was him, Shadow, older, strained. I've watched from the outside long enough. The nest is bigger than we knew. What they've rebuilt isn't a unit. It's a machine designed to act without conscience, to erase and replace. The audio paused. A click. Then, Robert is not who you think he is. Emily's heart thudded. He was recruited by Sector 9. They're not rogue. They are the directive. Now, Fort Morrison was the last clean slate. You were the final test. But now, another pause. They're sending the order, terminate Huron, terminate you, reset the field, clean the leak. Emily's legs felt weak. Then the final line. Run. The speaker died. Emily looked at Huron. I have to confront him. Huron shook her head. You have to disappear. I can't. You can't win this, Mercer. But Emily was already moving. Back at Fort Morrison, General Robert Mercer was reviewing a satellite feed when the secure line buzzed. Sir, a voice said, we have confirmation. Subject Mercer has made contact with the ghost. His hand froze on the desk. Is Huron still alive? Yes, sir. His jaw tightened. Send the directive, clean both, full kill order. No survivors, no footprint. Then he leaned back in his chair and stared at the photo on his desk. Emily, smiling once, years ago, he flipped it face down and whispered, I warned you not to chase shadows on the Romanian border. Emily and Huron moved through night terrain like wraiths, not to run, but to re-enter the game on their terms. Because now the real story wasn't about proving who she was. It was about choosing who to become. Mercer had been trained by ghosts, but now she would haunt them back. Why did she still wear her wedding band? And why did she walk into Fort Morrison one last time, knowing she might not walk out? The rain turned to ice somewhere over Germany. By the time Emily landed back on U.S. soil, the world had already turned against her. Her credentials were revoked, her access deleted, her name flagged under a Tier 1 internal breach notice. She had become what they trained her to eliminate, a ghost with no country. And yet, she didn't run. She planned inside a safe house near Arlington. She and Huron reviewed every string, every movement General Mercer had made in the past 6 months, every name attached to Sector 9, every time he had lied, not just to her, but for her. He hadn't just sent her to Fort Morrison. He had used her as bait. She wasn't meant to succeed. She was meant to burn, and in doing so, reveal the last of Echo's resistance. Huron, Shadow, and maybe others they hadn't yet named. But what Mercer didn't count on was Emily surviving, and now she was the last line left. The plan was quiet. Not an assault, not an extraction, an exposure. Emily and Huron entered Fort Morrison through a forgotten tunnel beneath the old munitions range, a Cold War relic never logged in current blueprints. They moved like they'd been born underground, because they had. Every Phantom Echo agent had once been trained in darkness. Now they used it to return. Inside the base, lights still burned. Orders still moved through classified servers and general. Robert Mercer still sat in the command office, dressed in 4 stars and built from stone. He didn't know she was behind the mirror, watching, listening, recording. Huron uploaded the packet. Years of data, names, leaks, hits ordered by Mercer and his Sector 9 branch. It all fed live into a secure channel. Emily activated herself. One pinged directly to Langley, another to a secure Senate oversight node. She didn't send it for glory. She sent it because it was the last play left, and because no lie can stand forever in silence, not even one whispered by a man who once said, "I do." When she stepped into his office, he didn't flinch, just raised his eyes. "Emily," he said. Not Captain, not Mercer. Emily. She wore her old field jacket, not out of nostalgia, out of purpose, and her wedding band still on her finger. "You lied to me," she said. He nodded. "Yes, you sent me to Morrison to fail. I sent you there because I had no choice." She stepped closer, calm, controlled. "You had every choice. I had orders," he said. "I didn't write the rules. I just knew what it would cost to break them. And yet, you trained me to break every rule that mattered." He paused. I softened for a flicker. "You were always more than what they wanted," he said. "You scared them. And you?" "I loved you," he said, quiet, real. She blinked once. "You still wearing the ring?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She held up her hand. "Until 5 minutes ago." And then, in one motion, she slid the band off, laid it gently on his desk next to the arrest warrant signed by 3 departments. He stared at it, then looked up. "You never broke." Her voice was calm. "You trained me not to." The takedown was silent. Military police arrived. No cuffs, no show. Just a shadow folding into the shape of justice. When Mercer was walked past the trainees, they froze. No one said a word, but eyes followed the woman behind him, Emily Mercer, still standing, still silent. She didn't stay. She handed the program to Reynolds, nodded once to Parker, and left before the base lights dimmed. Huron followed, vanishing into a different corridor, a different mission. Shadow was still out there, watching. The war hadn't ended, but now the sides were clearer. And Mercer? She returned to the place it began, a garage in Kansas, her father's old workbench. Dust on the tools, grease under her fingernails, where she fixed things by hand, where lies didn't hold, and where truth wasn't a flag or a weapon. It was earned. Years later, a young female recruit arrived at Fort Morrison with no clear background. Quiet, eyes too sharp for her age, no connections, no past. She wore a plain field jacket. And when Reynolds asked her where she learned to shoot like that, she said, "My mom taught me. Said if you can see the wind, you can hit the truth." Reynolds nodded slowly, then smiled. And in that moment, no one saw the black ink behind her collar. A panther, mid-leap, claws extended, phantom echo. Lived again. Sometimes, the strongest voice doesn't echo in orders or headlines. It walks alone, in silence, and leaves behind something louder than sound, dignity.